So front sights. You went out, you spent the money, you bought your pistol that you did all the research in the world on, but then everybody says, well, now you gotta change the sights. Why? What the heck's wrong with the sight? So in this case, we've got a new Glock 17 Gen 5. So most people think, hey, if Glock didn't want you to have these sights, they would have put other sights on there. Here's one of the things, price. So this gun retails in the United States for $500 to $600, give or take. If we take upgraded sights onto this gun from the manufacturer, we're now adding to the overall MSRP. So when you go in the gun store, a $500-600 pistol may now be $600-700. So to keep the price point in an area that they want to be in, they have to skimp, I guess, in a few spots. Will these sights work? Sure. Will they just fall off all of a sudden when you're shooting? No, there's people that have carried these plastic Glock sights for years. But one thing that's a big problem with the plastic sights is once it becomes nighttime, you no longer can acquire sights. So we're going to talk a little bit about the difference between night sights and other types of sights. One thing that night sights don't do for you is help you identify a target. All those night sights do is help you figure out if the pistol is aligned on whatever target you're identifying with some type of light or a silhouette. But they don't help you see a target. All they're helping you see is where your muzzle is in relationship to the rear of the pistol. The first question is, what are you gonna do with the sights? If you're just straight up target shooting, things like, here we go. One of my favorite sights is the Ameriglo operators. Nice bright front. Ameriglo was the original inventor of this. There's other companies that make it. Ameriglo invented this. So you've got a nice bright front. The bright front is then outlined. This, in this case, is a bright orange. They also make one that is a green, same front sight. I don't know if you're able to get any of that, Drew. But what that does, there's tons of studies done by a lot of very smart people, more intelligent than I, that bright color, your eye, it's able to pop in front of your eye. And some people say, well, which color should I get? Well, guess what? Your eye may see this chartreuse green better than it sees the orange, but that may not be the same for everybody. I kind of jumped topics, but what I was about to tell you guys is if you're looking at just straight up target shooting, this is not probably the sight for you. If we pull up here an oldie, this is a Browning high power, beautiful example of a high power. This one was carried by a friend of mine for 35 years on duty. Well taken care of, it's got some holster marks, but this is a straight up steel set of sights. So what this sight picture does for you is gives you a very defined aiming point. You've got very little margin for adjusting. When I say adjusting, I'm talking about windage and elevation. So everything's very tight with these steel sights. Now this is a factory setup, but I think this is a great example. So if you're doing straight up target shooting, you want a very small front sight, something that does not cover up a ton of the target. Whereas these combat style sights, like I've got on this 19X, again, great sight, but it's a big blocky chunk of material that when pointed out at the target, especially at distance, that's gonna cover up a lot of the target. So when you're ordering sights, you gotta think about what are you gonna be doing with the pistol. So will this allow you to get some accurate shots? Sure it will, but it's not gonna do it the same way that, say, this skinny fiber. This is from Dawson Precision. This is a beautiful 10mm that I had built by my friend Bob Housingay. It's my deer hunting pistol. The fiber's on here though, so that's fiber optic. That fiber optic gathers light, ambient light, so the brighter it is, the brighter that fiber is gonna appear from the viewer's perspective at the back of the sight. So as you point that sucker out there, all the light that's gathered through the rod is focused into the ends of the rod. So pros to this, pros are you've got a very bright aiming point, just like I told you about with this. Another pro is you can get it a lot narrower than you can a sight like this one here. Some of the cons though, I break these all the time. I break them going in and out of the holster. When you shoot a lot, these things heat up. The nice thing is it's cheap. So for the Dawson, you buy this stuff, that'll last me years right there. You only are using about an inch at a time. And it's very simple to replace that. You use a lighter or a small butane torch. You're not burning it, all you're doing is warming it up. We could actually do a little video for you on how that's done, but they will break. So if you train with these, keep some of that in your range bag because they will eventually go bad on you and crack. It's a plastic product, so the heat from the gun is going to eventually start to wear it out. So right now we've been doing a lot of talk on the front sight. The rear sight plays a big role too. So this gun, I set this up for deer hunting. So you don't hunt deer at night where I live, so I know I'm gonna have ambient light to see this front sight. I want a very defined sight that in the woods, I can pick it out, but I also wanted something that was narrow enough that allowed me to take a shot. With this pistol, 50 yards is not a difficult shot because it is such a finely built, accurate pistol. But now the rear sight on this, again, this is a adjustable sight on this. This is Dawson's adjustable sight. So I can adjust elevation and windage all on that sight. Flat, serrated, so you'll see these serrations on the back of both of these sights. Those serrations help cut the glare. So as sunlight hits it, those lines break up a glare that would cause you difficulty in lining it up. Now, one thing I want you to think about when you look at this, you might say, okay, if this helps me be the most accurate, why wouldn't I want that on a combat pistol? There's a lot of sharp edges on this. There's a lot of things here to snag coming out of a holster. There's a lot of parts here that could break. It's not that this is not durable, but it's not made to take the bashing something like this from Ameriglo is made to take. But check out some of the similarities. You've got a serrated rear, just like you saw on those Dawsons. You've got no adjustment to these. The adjustment is made by moving this sight. So once you set these sights up on the gun, you adjust them left or right. The height is set when you order them, and normally they're shipped in a matching pair. So you may have to do some adjustment left or right, and we'll talk to you for a minute about how that's done. But the main thing is, what are you wanting to do with the sights? And I think for most of us, it's a gun that we're carrying that we're going to protect ourselves. So very important, something that you can pick out and see very easily. For me, having a night sight is important. I've had a lot of guys that are known in this industry say night sights are a waste of money. Turn the lights out or go out on the range at night and take a flashlight, put the gun out in front of you, and try to shoot. When you don't have any type of illumination in your sight, it's very hard to line the sights up, especially if it's just a very dim light situation. Just lining them up with zero reference point is hard to do. Fibers will help you. So back to the fiber optics, the fibers will help you with that, but it's not gonna be the same as a true tritium sight. So there's some other ones out there. Walther Firearms does a sight. This is the PPS. They also have these available on a couple of their other guns. That's a luminescent paint. So it's not a true tritium. They get away with some of the complexities of working with tritium, which is a radioactive material, by just using a luminescent paint. I don't know if we can see it or not, but they will glow in the dark basically. So you're getting some of that ability to pick up a reference point. One of the things though you notice is you don't have that bright sight that pops out at you. And some people don't need that. Some of that depends on your eyes and your abilities to see. Here's a Glock 10mm. We've got no night sights on this. It's a bright fiber. I set this gun up as the type of weapon that you'd carry like in the backcountry or deer hunting as well, because this is a suitable cartridge for deer hunting. And I've got that narrow fiber up front. These are Ameriglos. The cool thing about the fibers is I can pop that out and put a different color in if I decide that that's maybe not my favorite color. But this is a great general purpose sight. So really, I think food for thought here, guys, is what are you going to do with the sights? Is it something that you're hunting with, target shooting with, or using for defense? For me, defense is, I want really, really durable. Caveat to that, for example, here, these little revolver from Ruger. This has a fiber up front. People will look at that and they'll say, well, that could break in a firefight. Well, I think one thing that we have to keep in mind, most of us, even a police officer, what do most of us do with a gun? We take our gun, we make sure it's loaded, and we put it in the holster and we go about our day, right? The sights are not exposed to a lot of abuse. This is not like a soldier that's deployed overseas whose gear's getting bashed about in the back of transport vehicles and helicopters and things like that. If you have to draw and shoot, if I have to draw and shoot this and it gets broken, I can still fight with this weapon. So I think one of the things that we have to think about is, are we setting ourselves up for the best opportunity to succeed, the best possible outcome, which for you depends on your eyes and what you see. For me, it's a durable sight like these Ameriglos. They're solid steel. You could bash on these, yeah, you'd break them, but as hard as you would have to bash on them to break them, something else is probably gonna break too. Bright colored front that pops out at you. You've got the tritium front and rear, so you can actually align the sights in dark conditions, which if you've never shot in the dark, might not seem like a big deal until you are in darkness. One of my favorite pistols is the Wilson Combat Brigadier Tactical. This is based on the Berreta. This gun ships with a night sight and rear sight similar to this. My friend Les Kismartoni, known as Les Pepperoni in the shooting world, Grandmaster Shooter, designed this sight for Wilson Combat. So I've got his rear on there, and then this is a Dawson Precision front, which, as we showed you guys, is a nice tight fiber. These sights have been very durable. They've lasted a long time. I've abused them. I do change the fibers from time to time as they do wear out. But here's what I was going to tell you. So I was a student in a low light shooting course. Most of the low light shooting I've ever done in my life has been with the Glocks. I began shooting this pistol as a test a few years ago, and during that time I hadn't done much low light shooting. Well, naturally, because this is the gun I was carrying and training with, I took this to the course, and I usually do real well in the low light situations. Well, one of the courses of fire was the instructor had us index out towards the target that we were shooting at. We shut the lights off. We had no ambient light, so no flashlights, no lighting on the range of any kind. And then you were to try to put a couple rounds into the cardboard. Well, most of the guys did pretty well. I think we were at about 10 yards. They did pretty well because they could still align their sights, left, right, up, down, right, windage and elevation. I did not do very well with this gun because I had no way of referencing where the pistol was in time and space. I'm gonna grab something here. Cool little device here that my buddy Sang makes. Rear sight, front sight, right? So equal height means that the sights, all three of them, 1, 2, 3, are lined up level. So if I do this, what's gonna happen? My bullet's gonna go high. If my sight picture looks like that to me, what's gonna happen? The round's gonna impact low. If it goes to the left or to the right, the round will impact left, the round will impact right. So in the complete darkness, if there is no visual feedback from your sights, how do you know if that's what you're seeing, or that's what you're seeing, or that's what you're seeing? Let alone, how do you know if this is superimposed over whatever target you want to hit? You know, are they imposed here? Does it look like this? If I was the bad guy, what does it look like? So night sights are a thing for a reason. That being said, as I stated a moment ago, you cannot identify a target with them. So when it comes down to it, at the end of the day, there's guys that swear by one sight or another. I've worked with these guys for years, which is part of the reason that you see me telling you this is the sight I would use. Ameriglo, that is. What's important is that you know where you need to line them up, what you can get away with. So when you're shooting quickly, if we imagine again that that's what we're looking at here, there's gonna be some wobble. Things are gonna be moving around as you're shooting. the gun's gonna be moving around. There's no way you're gonna hold everything perfectly still. So you need to figure out what is the acceptable wobble for you with your sights. What can you get away with? Some sights, like these here, they're so tight, the gap in the rear notch to the front blade, that if they're not lined up perfect, you won't even know if you're lined up at all. There's almost no margin for error there. Pretty crude, but this is a highly accurate pistol if you line everything up correctly. The three main types again, solid steel like I just showed you. We've got fiber optic, and now there's also fibers on the market that have fibers in the rear, which help you pick up the rear sights in low light. I'm not a fan of all that fiber, it's more parts to break. Then you've got all steel with the tritium. So this one has the luminescent front, no tritium in the rear. We've got stock plastic sights, which there are many companies that make plastic sights. This one's on a Glock. One of our favorite guns here from Walther, the PPQ. These are plastic sights on this gun. And again, this gun's got thousands of rounds through it, and these sights haven't broke. They're working just fine. So it's interesting when people say, oh, those sights are gonna get you killed. And then there is the conglomeration, my favorite, which is the bright colored front, tritium rear, serrations in the back. I have a lot of good luck with these. That front sight, in closing, I'll talk about this. That front sight being that bright dot, if any of you guys use a red dot, either on a pistol, here it is, like this RMR here from Tritium, this beautiful bore sight solutions, Glock 17, either on a gun like this or on a carbine, like this guy here, or on the one up top. So same technology, same thought process as to how it's working. You put the dot on what you want to see and you squeeze the trigger. That is a little bit of how this is working with that bright colored front sight. Now, you don't have to line up the sights when you're using a gun like this. You put the dot on whatever you want to see and you press the trigger. If you develop a great grip with the pistol that allows the gun to be indexed, meaning lined up, so if I'm looking at what I want to shoot and I bring the gun up, the sights for the most part, if you have taught yourself correctly, are lined up when you press the gun out. There might be some slight refinement that's needed, slight, but just like the red dot, and this is something we teach in class, put that, I'll call it the dot in class, because most of us are running around with some type of brightly colored front sight. I'll say, put the dot on the target, press the trigger. Put it on the target, press the trigger. Put it on the target, press the trigger. And that's just like these red dot works, red dots. So there's another sight consideration as well. So this is a suppressor height sight. So this sight is tall enough to see over a suppressor or see through an RMR, which is what we have here, through that red dot. So these taller sights, if you had a suppressor screwed on the gun, this one is set up for the RMR height. The suppressor height might even be a little bit taller, because as you know, if there was a suppressor on here, i.e. a silencer, the sight would need to be able to see over the can, as it were. So these night sights, blacked out otherwise, and this is not a primary sighting system, but there's no reason that you couldn't use those if you decided to take that off. What's the consideration though? If you think about this here, if I'm aiming with this, what's going to happen? Well, my point of impact, the elevation of the bore here, is far below the sight, unlike a stock. See the difference in height? It's considerable. So you got to take into account, if you're trying to make a very precise shot, the height of the bore, which is where the bullet's leaving the barrel, over the actual sight. So all that said, guys, there's a lot of stuff out there that you can choose from. As you see, we like the Ameriglo. There's a lot of stuff out there, and there is a lot of stuff that I think there's some misconceptions on. The fibers, great stuff, just be prepared to maybe maintain them a little bit. And as far as I'm concerned, if you're carrying a gun to defend your life, you should have night sights. This is Mickey with CarryTrainer.com. Be well. Check out Ameriglo.com. Use CarryTrainer for a discount code. Be well.